Across every modern economy, one trend remains constant. Public expenditure as a percentage of the gross national product rises continuously over time. The state manages vast capital resources, but it operates without the primary tool that forces efficiency in the private sector, the price mechanism. While private sector capital allocation is driven by absolute financial return, public sector allocation is governed by the broader metrics of social utility and collective welfare. Without profit and loss signals to guide these decisions, the state faces the persistent risk of misallocating resources on a national scale. To understand how this capital is managed, we must trace the path from the macro-theoretical laws of state expansion to the specific microeconomic math used to evaluate where that capital actually lands. To maintain economic stability during periods of growth, the expanding state must synthesize its own mathematical metrics to justify the scale of its investments. In the late 19th century, German economist Adolf Wagner formalized this trend as the law of increasing state activity. Wagner argued that as societies become more complex, the administrative efficiency and sheer scale of the public sector naturally outpace private enterprise in organizing mass populations. Technological advancement creates entirely new, complex state functions, such as the modern demand for specialized public goods like mass education and health infrastructure. Under Wagner's framework, the modern state inherently prioritizes aggregate social welfare over individual profit motives. While Wagner identified the long-term trend of expansion, he did not accurately map the specific rhythm of how that expansion occurs in the real world. This suggests that relentless state expansion is not merely a political choice, but a structural feature of economic modernization. In 1961, economists Alan Peacock and Jack Wiseman proposed a new hypothesis after analyzing United Kingdom public expenditure between 1890 and 1955. Their data showed government spending doesn't grow smoothly, it moves in upward waves. These jumps are triggered by social crises, like wars. During these emergencies, the public's tolerance for taxation is displaced upwards. When the crisis ends, the state absorbs these funds permanently. This observation indicates a ratchet effect, where the state permanently manages increasingly large pools of capital even after the initial catalyst has passed. Because state expenditure tends to rise irreversibly, the pressure to allocate this permanently expanded capital pool efficiently becomes a primary economic challenge. This brings us to the microeconomic reality. How does a government decide which specific projects receive this expanded capital? Private sector efficiency is measured by the capital output criterion. The formula is simple: the increment in investment, delta I, divided by the increment in output, delta Q. But this formula hits a hurdle with public goods because output relies on market prices. Public goods, such as national defense or rural roads, are often provided without a direct user fee and generate massive external benefits, making a purely financial output figure nearly impossible to calculate. When standard private sector ROI math fails, the state must utilize a different system to measure the unpriced value of its projects. Social cost-benefit analysis, or SCBA, provides a framework for these decisions by aiming to maximize consumer surplus across society. SCBA forces the state to quantify a project's direct and indirect impacts. For a highway, direct costs are materials and labor. Indirect costs are noise and environmental damage. Direct benefits measure time saved. Indirect benefits track reduced accidents and regional economic growth. The challenge for the economist is to assign a defensible currency value to these abstract variables, such as the worth of an hour saved in traffic. SCBA serves as the state's synthetic price mechanism, requiring policymakers to mathematically quantify the unquantifiable to demonstrate an increase in aggregate social welfare. Eventually, individual cost-benefit matrices must compete against one another for the state's finite capital pool. To manage this, some governments utilize zero-based budgeting, a process where projects must theoretically justify their entire funding requirement from a baseline of zero, using their SCBA data as evidence. While SCBA is a rigorous tool, it has limitations. It cannot resolve broad developmental crises alone, and it often struggles with high levels of future uncertainty or projects like national defense. Theories like those from Wagner and Peacock-Wiseman explain why the state's capital pool expands, while tools like SCBA and zero-based budgeting determine how that capital is allocated. In public economics, capital efficiency is not measured by financial profit, but by the mathematical justification of aggregate social welfare.